There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. Order. Order members, please be seated. Honourable members, I wish to announce that the vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Ms. S.C. van der Merwe has been filled by the nomination of Mr. D.W. Swanepoel with effect from the 16th of October 2013. The members made and subscribed the oath in my office. And welcome, Mr. Swanepoel. We now come to notice of motion. Does any member wish to give a notice of a motion? The ANC.
Thank you, Speaker. I move on behalf of the ANC that in the next sitting, the House debates mechanisms geared at reducing crime in rural areas nationally. Thanks.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? One member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that the House debates the extent of performance bonuses paid to government employees without them achieving the necessary outputs as per the annual performance plans of the departments, and to come up with rules in terms of which such performance bonuses can be paid. Thank you.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Or member right at the back.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in the next sitting, the House debates addressing the effect, both positive and negative, that social media uses on youth and families. Thank you very much.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Honourable member.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that the House debates the importance of the research being done by scientists on board the SA Agulhas II as part of our extended South African National Antarctic Programme and the respective roles of the Departments of Environmental Affairs and Science and Technology in this regard. Thank you.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? IFP, Honourable Member van der Merwe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that at the next sitting of the House, I will move.
Member, I can hear you. I don't know if the others can hear you. If you might speak closer to the mic or bring the mic closer to you, or both.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Number 5. Speaker, I hereby give notice that at the next sitting of the House, I'll move on behalf of the IFP that this House debates the importance of revamping the technical vetting process of new candidates for the South African Police Services.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Honourable member, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House debates the effects of poor police work on the conviction rates of criminals and its consequences for the fight against crime.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Honourable member at the back, you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debate strategies to deal decisively with corrective rape and gay and lesbian killings. Thank you.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Honourable member, you have the floor.
Thank you, Speaker. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House debates the long overdue election of traditional councils throughout the Northwest Province and come up with the solutions to fast-track these elections. Thank you.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? Honourable member at the back.
Thank you, Speaker. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates dealings with hurdles in the attainment of 2% employment equity for people with disabilities. I thank you.
Noted. Does any other member wish to give notice of a motion? That doesn't appear to be the case. In this case, we move on. We now come to motions without notice. Are there any motions without notice? Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move without notice that the House welcomes the recent renaming of the Gauteng R24 freeway section as the Albertina Sisulu Freeway by the President of the country. Further notes that this comes after the City of Johannesburg has recommended the renaming of municipal roads and streets in Johannesburg after the struggle heroine Umama Albertina Sisulu. We remember that R24 highway stretches from OR Tambo Airport through the Johannesburg CBD, Ruodeport, and finally to Randfontein on Gauteng's border with Northwest. We also recall that the renaming ceremony by the President happened during the Transport Month, on which the country is focusing on promoting transport infrastructure and promoting road safety. We further recall that the official renaming of the R24 highway is in line with our country's 20th year of freedom celebration, and commend the City of Johannesburg Council for keeping the legacy of our fallen heroes and heroines. I thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections are agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice?
Thank you, Speaker. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that the House notes with great sadness the death of 6 people as a result of an horrific explosion at Rolf Laboratories in Middelburg on Monday, 14th of October 2013. Also notes that 41 workers were injured during this tragic accident and were treated at the Wilhelmsthal Hospital in Middelburg. Further notes that 18 patients who were in a critical condition were transferred to Doranginza and Cecilia Makiwana hospitals in Port Elizabeth and East London respectively. Conveys our sincere condolences to the family and friends of the 6 victims. Further conveys our best wishes for a speedy recovery to those who are still hospitalized or recovering at home. I thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections are agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes that on the 28th of October 2013, thousands of matriculants will be starting their final year exams for the year 2013. Further notes that the matric exams mark the culmination of 12 years of schooling. We believe that matric exam open greater opportunities for learners as they are about to leave the schooling system. We further believe that with hard work and determination, they can achieve the best. We urge all our learners to remain focused, motivated, and continue to work hard, and wish all our learners who will be sitting for this year's final examination the best. I thank you.
Thank you. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections are agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Honourable Member.
Speaker, I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that the House notes that the international organization World of Children will honor the 19-year-old South African Michaela Mycroft for her work as an ability activist for children with disabilities in South Africa. Also notes that Michaela is the co-founder of the Charlie Campaign, a non-profit organization that has helped more than 10,000 disabled children receiving equipment and physical therapy since 2004. Further notes that this award will be bestowed on Michaela on the 7th of November this year in New York City. thanks Michaela and the Chaley campaign for their commitment and desire to improve the lives of children living with disabilities in South Africa, and further congratulates Michaela on this remarkable achievement.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Honourable Koos van der Merwe, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move on behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party without notice that this House notes that Mrs. Bridget Oppenheimer, widow of the late Mr. Harry Oppenheimer, passed away on Wednesday, 23rd October, at the age of 92 after a short illness. Further notes that along with her husband, Mrs. Oppenheimer was a close family friend of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi for many decades, and the Oppenheimers donated funds to causes identified by him. Also acknowledges that the science, the arts, conservation and education benefited from the Oppenheimers' enthusiastic support. Join the IFP in passing their condolences to the surviving family members. Thank you.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Deputy Chief of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move without notice that the House knows that on Saturday, the 5th of October 2013, retired Olympic swimmer Natalie Detroit received an honorary MBE from the British High Commission in Pretoria. Further notes that Detroit, who has won 13 gold and 2 silver medals in world-class swimming competition, was handed the award by the Earl of Wessex, Prince Edward, for her contribution to Paralympic sports. Recalls that in receiving the award, which is called Member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, Natalie shares the title with previous recipients such as famous singer Adele and actor Rowan Atkinson. Further recalls that Detroit, who retired after the 2012 London Olympics and Paralympic Games, where she won 3 gold medals and 1 silver, is an inspiration to all athletes throughout the world. And we congratulate her on her achievements and wishes her well. I thank you.
Thank you. And I'll put the motion. There are any objections? Certainly can't be any. No objections agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Honourable
Speaker, I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that the House notes that South Africa has once again emerged as the leading travel destination for international tourists at the World Travel Awards Gala ceremony hosted in Nairobi, Kenya on the 16th October 2013. Also notes that South Africa walked away with an impressive 27 awards out of the 56 that were up for grabs. Recognizes that 156,000 travel agencies and professionals in 140 countries voted for the winners of these awards, congratulates the city of Cape Town for being awarded the ultimate prize, being named Best Destination in Africa.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? That doesn't appear to be the case. Now move on to the next item on the order paper. The first item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, the Honourable the Chief Whip.
Honourable Speaker, I move that the House notes the letter by the Minister of Women, Children and People with Disabilities, tabled on the 20th of September 2013, recalls its resolution of 23 June 2011 that the appointment of new commissioners would be in accordance with the Commission for Gender Equality Act number 39 of 1996, once it had been revised to bring it in line with the Constitution of 1996 and the Public Finance Management Act number 1 of 1999. recognizes that the process of revising the Act is not completed yet, and notwithstanding its resolution of 23 June 2011 establishes an ad hoc committee to identify suitable candidates for the filling of vacancies in the Commission. To the committee to consist of 12 members as follows: ANC 7, DA 2, COPE 1, IFP 1, and other parties 1. Exercise those powers in Rule 138 that may assist it in carrying out its task. Consider the nominees submitted by the Minister of Women, Children and People with Disabilities. Recommend, where necessary, which commissioners should be appointed as full-time commissioners and which should be appointed as part-time commissioners. And submit a report with these recommendations to the House by the 7th of November 2013. I so move.
Thank you. I now put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections are agreed to. The next item on the order paper is member statements. Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement? The ANC. At the back there, you have the floor.
Thank you, Speaker. The 10th of October 2013 was a proud day for 119 young people who received gold awards from President Zuma at the President's Award for Youth Empowerment at the Table Bay Hotel in Cape Town. Inmates and private school pupils shed tears in an emotional ceremony to honor South Africans between the ages of 14 and 24. The President was flanked by the Earl and Countess of Wessex, Prince Edward and Princess Sophie, who represented the Duke of Edinburgh's International Award Foundation. The award is offered in 144 countries. In receiving his gold award, Jason Caldecott of the Robertson Correctional Center in the Western Cape and a former drug addict said that the program had taught him to believe in himself again. There were young people from all walks of life, ranging from Robertson Correctional Center inmates to Bridge House pupils from Franschhoek. The award program requires participation in 4 key areas: community service, a group adventure journey, physical recreation and skills development. There are an estimated 14,300 participants in South African schools, prisons, community youth groups, and orphanages. The ANC wants to encourage the recipients of this award to grab this opportunity given and to use it to shape their future. I thank you, Speaker.
DA. Proceed.
Thank you very much, Speaker. The Democratic Alliance won convincingly at a by-election held yesterday in Makado, Ward 5, Olifantshoek, and Tiani Village. This is the first ever resounding victory by the DA in the deep rural areas in the province. The victory marks a decisive increase from 1.46% in 2011 local government elections to 38.85% in yesterday's by-elections. If there ever was not an equivocal endorsement that more and more people are coming to the DA. Yesterday's by-election was exactly that and more. People in Ward 5 have set the politics of realignment on an irreversible trajectory in Limpopo. This is a watershed victory for the DA in the province, but significantly, this augurs well for the coming 2014 general elections. In this deep rural area, traditionally ANC stronghold, the communities have demonstrated that dissatisfaction about poor service delivery. The DA is now a party of choice. The ANC is losing its grip. People no longer be cowed by the ANC's disparaging lies about the DA in government. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the communities of Ward 5, Olifantshoek, Tiani Village, and who went in their numbers to vote for the Democratic Alliance. Special mention of gratitude must go to the DA activists who work tirelessly to make sure that the DA wins this award. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pope.
Honourable Speaker, I'd like to discuss the issue of the Indian Cricket Board of Control's role in reducing their tour to South Africa. I think what we have here is a situation of bullying of the worst kind by the Indian Cricket Board of Control. To suggest that they can choose who our leadership is of the CSA, I find frankly disgusting. All revenue in cricket is really controlled by the Indian Cricket Board of Control, some 70% worldwide. And here you have a situation where the Champions League, where we have a 20% control, at recent discussions, we were excluded from the financial discussions. I find that absolutely abnormal and sickening. The CSA has become a weak organization and has not listened to the findings of the Nicholson Commission regarding governance. And independent directors who are not independent were more often than not elected. The question is, why has the minister not responded? Clearly the BRICS Accord doesn't extend into the sporting field. So I think this is problematic. The result is that the CSA will be potentially ruined. Transformation and development on the ground will be badly affected, as some 300 million is going to go missing in the shortened tour. On a lighter note, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to wish the Western Province rugby team all the best in the Currie Cup final. By now you will know my role with the Sharks, but if I listen to some of the local commentators on Saturday night...
On that happy note, and remember your time has expired. The ANC. The ANC, yes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The ANC is encouraged by the growing progress being made in accelerating the building of school infrastructures. Therefore, the newly built Chanchalala Senior Primary School in Gugwini Village, just outside Lusikisiki, stands as a beacon of hope for the local community, as they can finally be assured that their children have a safe place to continue their learning and development. Before this, learners in Gugwini Village used to travel more than 10 kilometers to attend school in the neighboring village, and those who remained behind were housed in a local church after the structure that was used was blown away by strong winds. These learners experienced difficult learning conditions where they all were crammed in one classroom, which negatively affected the quality of teaching and learning. The new school boasts, among other things, 14 classrooms and 2 water tanks. The ANC is proud of this achievement, as Chanchalala joins the list of brand new schools that have been opened as part of the One School a Week campaign. The campaign has also seen the opening of Nonzolo Senior Primary School, Kokweloni Senior Primary School, and Ndlovaipatwa Senior Primary School, among others, as part of the program. The ANC is also very proud to announce that thus far, a total of 16 schools have been built and handed over, and more schools are still to be handed over in the Eastern Cape. I thank you.
The IFP.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the Honourable Minister Gordon cracked down on the state abuse of the resources yesterday, there may as well have been a backlog of Nongoma behind him, because the way the ruling party and its project, NFP campaign in Nongoma over the 3 weeks ahead of yesterday's by-election, speak loudly of the abuse of state resources. It also speaks about what to come in 2014. You want to meet me outside? At the height of the by-election
Order, members,
campaign,
order.
a storm of government activity suddenly blew in Ngoma. Millions of rand of state coffers were spent in 3 wards over a span of 3 weeks. Government function completed with the musician, DJ, and radio personalities.
Order, all members, order. Proceed, sir.
Thank you, sir. When questioned on Ukhoze FM, the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal quite blatantly said that the provincial government has decided to go to Ngoma because of the by-election. But the ANC was contesting this election, not the government. Moreover, silently delivering services and passing people to parties is not the way to defend government. It is the way to buy votes with taxpayers' money, and that is indefensible.
Honourable members, order.
Not to be outdone, the mayor of Zululand spent vast sum in the 3 wards delivering water tanks and other services to people who have been waiting for years for her to deliver. I urge this parliament to seriously pay attention to the implication of ruling political parties' use of state resources to gain advantage over their political competitors. Something must be urgently be done. In fact, we call on Parliament to debate this matter. Every South African of integrity must be concerned about this state of affairs, because it is the interest of every South Africa that democracy must not be survived, but that it must be
please order. Stop heckling. If you want to have a private discussion, please go out. Continue, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. They know what they've done.
Your time has expired. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
FF plus.
Geachte Speaker, die skorsing van generaal-majoor Chris Ngobo, waarnemende hoof van die polisie se misdaad-intelligensie-eenheid, oor teenstrydighede met sy kwalifikasies, is 'n ernstige vingerverwysing na die staat van disfunksionaliteit waarin die eenheid alreeds verval het. Ernstige vrae moet gevra word oor waarom die ongeruimdhede rondom Ngobo nou eers op die lappe kom, nadat hy reeds in Junie verlede jaar in die pos aangestel is. Die eenheid is ironies genoeg juis veronderstel om die spesialis op die gebied van hierdie tipe inligting te wees. Die eenheid spesialiseer onder meer in koeverte optredes en meeluistering en is die regering se oë en ore om inligting te bekom wat as 'n bedreiging vir die staat beskou kan word. Dit is alom bekend dat Ngobo 'n voormalige leiwag en vertroueling is van president Jacob Zuma. Is dit hoekom dit so lank geneem het om agter te kom dat daar teenstrydighede is met sy kwalifikasie? Uit hoofde van sy ampt sou hy op internasionale vlak met amptsgenote gepraat en inligting uitgeruil het. Daarvoor moes hy oor die hoogste sekuriteitsverklaring beskik het. Dis moeilik om te aanvaar dat daar nou eers met sy kwalifikasies fout gevind word. Dit is ook werklik skrikwekkend dat 'n eenheid met soveel mag so totaal disfunksioneel kan raak. Dit maak Suid-Afrika 'n bespotting van die internasionale intelligensiegemeenskap en behoort elke Suid-Afrikaner tot onrustigheid te stem, want die gevolg is dat misdaad sal gedei.
The ANC.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The ANC believes that economic and political cooperation with other countries can improve the lives of all our people and will continue to work towards a better life for all, a better Africa, and a better world. Hence, it welcomes the signing of agreements in the field of agriculture and cooperation in the field of art and culture between South Africa and Senegal. This was concluded after President Jacob Zuma's recent visit to Senegal and his meeting with his Senegalese counterpart, Mr. Macky Sall. The visit has also solidified the relationship between South Africa and Senegal, and as such, the two countries have pledged to play important roles in promoting peace and stability through participating in peacekeeping operations in their regions. Furthermore, the signing of these two agreements has demonstrated the need to unlock the economic potential between the two countries through economic cooperation that includes industrial and technical partnership and the transfer of skills. I thank you.
Thank you. ACDP.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The African Christian Democratic Party calls on the President to dissolve the current NYDA board and establish a new board comprised of all political parties to ensure accountability. The ACDP welcomes the dismissal of the NYDA CEO, Stephen Ngubeni, who is implicated in financial misconduct. The ACDP youth have expressed serious concerns regarding what they call the dysfunctional and corrupt reputation of the NYDA and say the failure of the board to follow proper procedure with regards to the firing of Ngubeni is just another example of how
Honourable
badly
members,
the
we really do
NYDA
want to listen to the speaker.
is managed.
I can hear you, but I can't hear her.
They have
Voting on a member.
They have also called into question the agency's announcement that charges against Chief Operating Officer and Executive Manager of Corporate Services have been dropped. Since its inception, NYDA has been shrouded in scandal, and these problems continue to give the youth in South Africa little hope of the NYDA following its mandate to provide services for all and to be their voice. The ACDP youth are therefore calling for a large-scale investigation into the whole agency. The ACDP's call for the President to dissolve the current NYDA board and establish a new board comprised of all political parties to ensure accountability aims to ensure the NYDA is strongly positioned to serve the youth in our country from every corner of our nation. Services must be provided for all and not just a chosen few that are connected with the ruling party. The ACDP calls on the Public Protector to look into the financial management of the funds given to the NYDA. The ACDP also calls on this House to urgently debate these issues, which are dividing our nation as significant numbers of youth feel they are being discriminated against. The ACDP stands for a shared future for all South Africans, and I thank you.
The DA.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Speaker. During a Home Affairs Portfolio Committee meeting last week, the Department of Home Affairs Director General Plenary confirmed that all South Africans will now have to pay 140 Rand for their first smart ID card and not just replacements, as previously stated by Minister Pandor in the Department's communications. For millions of South Africans, 140 Rand is literally the difference between survival and starvation. And the new smart ID card price poses a serious threat to their financial security. The Department needs to provide clarity on payment of fees and also needs to update this House on its discussions with Treasury in this regard. Imposing a new ID system on South African citizens and enforcing them to pay for it effectively puts a price on citizenship that not everyone can afford and would exclude them from electoral and social security processes once the green barcode IDs are phased out. The DA thus calls the Minister Pandor and her department to provide clarity on the fee structure of the new smart ID cards. I thank you, Speaker.
The ANC.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The African National Congress is pleased by the recent outcomes of the Auditor General's report on the Northern Cape Provincial Government. This is an indication that our provincial government is dedicated to achieving a clean audit. Most government departments and entities received unqualified audits, and none of the departments received a disclaimer opinion during the 2012-2013 financial year's audit. The other provinces should follow suit, and we have noted the findings of the Auditor General on the DA-led Western Cape government. The recent reports confirm the ANC's belief that service delivery under the DA has seriously lapsed and is in crisis. In the Western Cape, even though 5 out of the 14 provincial departments recorded a clean audit, there were still serious problems listed with most of those 5. Of the 12 provincial entities, 2 of them, viz. The Cape Nature and the Housing Development Fund, received bad qualified opinions. Over the period 2012-2013, the Western Cape quality of performance reports regressed. Leadership stagnated. Procurement problems were widespread and management responses were at a snail pace. Once again now, the ANC congratulates Gauteng province, which has achieved 8 clean audits and 23 unqualified audits for the 2012-13 financial year.
Member, your time has expired.
Once more, thank you very much.
The IFP. IFP.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, following the recent announcement by Mr. Happy News Hlaudi Motsoeneng that all SABC news programs should be balanced with 70% good news, it comes as no surprise that the popular debate show, The Big Debate, has been unceremoniously canned. According to these new news standards, which is in clear contravention of the SABC's editorial codes, the show was clearly too critical and not smitten enough with government's performance. Mr. Motsoeneng has made a number of similar public statements in the past, which raise fundamental questions about the SABC's editorial independence. It has become clear that the SABC is not only sacrificing its public accountability and editorial policy, but it is moving ever closer to becoming a de facto state broadcaster. It brings into question the entire SABC editorial review process, which is currently underway. Why spend taxpayer money reviewing policies which will not be implemented? The same could be asked about the millions of rands we spent advertising positions on the recently newly appointed board when the whole process was cast in stone from the beginning. Mr. Karim, who is now not here, should provide us with answers. Is the SABC still a public broadcaster or is it now a state broadcaster? For if the SABC is now officially ANC TV, who can blame those South Africans who are not supporters of the ANC, who on the basis of these new developments no longer believe that it's the right thing to do to pay their TV licenses? The TV license payer, the ordinary South African, deserves answers. I thank you.
Cope.
Minister Gordon and Minister of Public Service and Administration, in fact the whole cabinet, should be commended for measures taken to curtail wasteful expenditure in public sector. This, Speaker, while so many South Africans are poor and need social service and survival in these difficult economic times, the message is clear: the party time is over. No more credit card and lavish entertainment. No more excesses in refurbishment of Home of Ministers. While we welcome this announcement, we are keenly awaiting the implementation. Bad habits are not easy to die. The next critical aspect which Cabinet needs to give serious attention to is the implementation of a stricter control to stem out the tide of corruption, especially with regard to the tender, dealing with private sector corruption, the construction sector corrupting, stealing of the public purse during the 2010 stadia, still awaiting action. The outgoing AG has expressed his serious concern consequences while
report released by the presidency. Indeed, as we finish the second decade of democracy, we have a good story to tell. A story that says South Africa is better than it was 20 years ago. Since 1990, ANC had proudly brought health services within easier reach to millions of rural people. ANC has proudly built 500 new clinics. ANC has proudly provided free schooling to about 7 million learners each year. ANC proudly brought or can still be achieved. It is time for, as we enter another decade of democracy, armed with our national development plan.
According to the report, the Western Cape economy has once again outperformed the national economy, as it is the province with the lowest unemployment rate in the country and the average in terms of income, with a Gini coefficient of 0.63, whilst the national figure stands at 0. Presented in this report show clearly that where the DA goes, and for the record, every single department in the Western Cape had an unqualified audit, and it's very
Mr. Speaker, National Democratic Society and develop common values, Maya, in the Red October March in Pretoria, we're used to being raped by other, especially at a time when we as all South Africans are expected to unite Meyer and his colleagues to refrain from time through whatever ways.
Responses.
Swanongoma is not so much that government provided services, somebody lost in the campaign. The men to exercise their democratic right, realizing that not to meet themselves. Whilst the people of Ward 5 in Limpopo have certainly exercised their democratic right, which we fought for and certainly will continue to defeating backwardness and a change into the past. Thank you.
Much, Speaker. I think it's important when we engage in the constituency work that we all do as members of Parliament, that we indicate to the public of South Africa that the change to an ID smart card is an important step forward in the management of security for our country. And thus we should encourage our people to take up the smart card once we call on them to apply. I would like to remind the honourable member from the DA, who's a member of the committee, that we are not saying you must immediately apply for the smart card. We have said we would take between 4 to 6 years to reach every South African. So we haven't called on every person to find 140 Rand immediately. And I may say with countries that have made a change of this kind, the public is required to pay a fee toward the new identity document or card. Now, what we have agreed with Treasury is that all first applicants will receive the card free. And with respect to senior citizens who are registered on the SASA register as grant recipients, they will receive the card free. The rest will apply and pay 140 Rand. Thank you.
Minister Nzimande.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to quickly respond to two statements. Esokuqala nje bengifuna nami ukujobelela kuGatsheni ukuthi Gatsheni uma uhluliwe induku ivumeni inkatha. Ngoba Speaker esifuna ukucacisa ukuthi uma ngabe kuukuthi ukhongolose ubethenga abantu kungani ukuthi amawadi amabili inkatha ehlulwe kuyona ehlulwanga ukhongolose. Ihlulwe iqembu elaqembuka enkatheni. Ngakho ke lokhu ukuthi abantu bakithi nanokuthi abantu bakithi abathengwa, abantu bakithi bahlakaniphile bayalibona ikusasa labo lalikhona. Induku ivumeni. The second thing to the honorable member who was talking about the SABC as a state broadcaster. There is absolutely nothing wrong for the public broadcaster to tell the good news and the good things that are happening in this country. Because the truth is, as the president says, South Africa is a much better place than it was in 1994. And that story has got to be told. The reason why the opposition is raising these things is because they want the good news to be hidden and only to be told the bad news. This country has changed for the better for the overwhelming majority of our people because of the African National Congress and its policies. We say to the SABC, don't be intimidated by the opposition, continue to tell the good story. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Minister Kwele.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In response to ANC member Ngubeni Maluleka on the successful state visit by President Zuma to Senegal, I would like to state that the visit did not only strengthen the relations and economic development between our two nations, it went beyond promoting peace and stability in our continent. It went into matters of economic development and integration of Africa. As you may remember, President Macky Sall leads the NECPAT program for the AU. President Jacob Zuma coordinates the infrastructure development for Africa, in particular Southern Africa, who are the champion. The highlight of the visit, as we all know now, was the bilateral arrangement to link Robben Island and Coral Islands. I think this is the most important historical event. Some across there will not like to know that most of the people, particularly of African origin, suffered in this historical site, Robben Island and Coral Island. I thank you.
Deputy Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Mdaka for celebrating the delivery of schools. This is part of the ASIDI, Accelerated School Infrastructure Development Program, that is being coordinated by the Presidency, the PICC. I'd like to share, Honourable Speaker, with the House that we've gone well beyond the 16 schools. As we speak right now, 37 schools have reached practical completion. Just in Libode, in the Eastern Cape, for example, there are 12 schools, state-of-the-art schools. These schools include media centers, ICT. They are fully furnished, dedicated grade R sites, and certainly represent a beacon of hope and islands of hope for the people who live in these poor communities. Indeed, the one school per week launch in the middle of July is on track, and if we just do the calculations, we've indeed exceeded the number of schools. Although we might have formally, in terms of ceremony, delivered 16 schools, the reality is that 37 schools have received practical completion, and the moment schools achieve practical completion, given the immediate need of the learners, we allow the occupation to take place. The ceremonies can follow thereafter. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. May I just say one more thing, that just the Western Cape itself will be a beneficiary of at least 12 schools in terms of this program by the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Council. Thank you very much.
Deputy Minister of Sports.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just a perspective, the Honourable Mackenzie, for him, his benefit and that of the House, who is as ill-informed as he is, seems to me, Mr. Speaker, the Nicholson Commission was appointed by the Ministry of Sport and Recreation, by nobody else. In fact, flowing from the recommendations of the Nicholson Commission, we have independent directors there today, some of them, and all of them, in fact, highly respected individuals. The accusation that the Minister of Sport and the Ministry is silent on the whole cricket saga that's going on at the moment is devoid of all truth. Factually, Mr. Speaker, negotiations processes were going on, and if we dare to issue a statement before it's concluded, we will be accused of interfering into the affairs of cricket and sport and not respecting the international rules of independence. It is precisely because of that, Mr. Speaker, that I would caution the honourable member, who is a seasoned sports administrator in the game of rugby. I know he's excited about Saturday coming, but just be patient. The results of Saturday will be known by the end of the whistle, and so will we issue a statement timelessly on the whole cricket saga. Mr. Speaker, may I just conclude by saying that this whole issue of dependence and independence and the respect of that barrier in international sport has led to the Ministers of Sport and the International Olympic Committee concluding at Cancun two years ago in Mexico, came forward with resolutions saying precisely that there is a role for governments in the developmental state to have a say in the development and management of sport. Because, Mr. Speaker, if we want to host something international, government must put up the guarantees, government must provide for everything. So I caution the member, be patient, the Minister of Sport will issue a statement in due course. Thank you.
That concludes ministerial responses. The Secretary will read the first to fourth orders together.
Introduction, Employment Tax Incentive Bill. Introduction, Merchant Shipping International Oil Pollution Compensation Fund Contributions Bill. Introduction, Taxation Laws Amendment Bill. And introduction, Customs Duty Bill.
Thank you. I now invite the Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to introduce before the House 4 Section 77 money bills. It's the bills that have just been read out: the Employment Tax Incentive Bill of 2013, the Merchant Shipping International Oil Pollution Compensation Fund Contributions Bill, the Taxation Laws Amendment Bill, and the Customs Duty Bill, all 2013. The Employment Tax Incentive Bill is part of a discourse that we've had for some time in South Africa about how do we tackle the high levels of unacceptable unemployment that we have in this country. Is part of, and only one part, of a wide range of measures taken by government as part of the Youth and the Skills Accord to improve the skills levels and employment levels amongst young people, but also generally unemployed people of all youth. And clearly what we are demonstrating as government is our determination that everything possible must be done to enable employment to increase. So through this bill, we are creating a dispensation through which enterprises can share the cost of employing both older and younger workers, both in special economic zones and outside of special economic zones under certain circumstances. In a sense, we are asking all of us to accept the dictum of Deng Xiaoping, the man who transformed China, that we've got to transform our economies and our countries by crossing the river, by feeling for the stones. So I'm tabling this afternoon this bill, which has two legs: employment in special economic zones to hire workers of all ages, and employment outside of special economic zones to give opportunities to young first-time job seekers aged between the ages of 18 and 29. Mr. Speaker, no developmental strategy can succeed if the time, energy, and talents of a country's people are not harnessed to achieve higher living standards. Employment, as we all know, offers an opportunity to do just that. But finding a job is about more than economics. It is a way to contribute to the well-being of our families, households, and communities. We also contribute to the welfare of our society and economy more broadly, and our confidence, dignity, self-image, and optimism is shaped by whether we have a job or not.
Well, honourable members, please reduce the noise level in the House.
Many South Africans are excluded from economic activity and as a result suffer disproportionately from unemployment, discouragement, and economic marginalization. Indeed, South Africa has some of the highest rates of unemployment worldwide, and we should spare no effort in reducing unemployment. The incidence of unemployment is highest among young people. This means that young people are denied the opportunity to gain the skills and experience that will enable them to build future careers and enable them to contribute to future economic growth. The lack of skills and the lack of opportunity is what we want to reverse by using a multiplicity of measures, this being one amongst them. Approximately 94% of unemployed young people do not have a formal or tertiary education, or rather further or tertiary education. Approximately 80% have never worked or been employed for longer than a year, and these are alarming indicators and stand in our way to achieve our stated objective to improve the lives of people in this country. So this bill, Mr. Speaker, creates a framework for firstly the fiscus and enterprises in South Africa to share costs to create employment, firstly in special economic zones, which will have a key role in creating and attracting investment in industries and indeed expanding employment as well. As we learn from elsewhere in the world, incentives play a very important part in attracting investment to special economic zones, and with that investment will come development of new industries and the opportunity for unemployed workers to be employed as well. Similarly, this bill provides, as I said earlier on, for the employment of youth between 18 and 29 in all parts of South Africa. Let me move on to the next bill, which is the Taxation Laws Amendment Bill and the Tax Administration Laws Amendment Bill. These amendment bills provide for revisions to existing tax legislation and complete the tax legislative changes arising from tax proposals as announced during the 2013 budget speech. Tax legislation dealing with annual rates and monetary amounts was passed earlier this year. Our fiscal sovereignty and our ability to fund government expenditure are premises on which are based or are premised on a sound tax policy framework and an efficient and effective revenue administration. As we know, global economic conditions continue to be fragile, and while the South African economy has weathered this period of turbulence reasonably well, we have certainly not returned, as we pointed out yesterday, to pre-recession levels. The taxation amendment bills encourage higher levels of retirement savings, encourage employers to assist their employees, especially those at the bottom of the income spectrum, to become homeowners, provide support for the development of special economic zones and the maritime sector, preserve and protect the tax bases of South Africa, and address tax anomalies that hinder commercial business activity. The next bill I wish to introduce is the Customs Duty Bill, which is also part of a group of customs bills that the House will be asked to consider. In an ever-changing and complex international, regional, and national environment, customs plays a critical role in supporting government's programs to promote economic growth, job creation, and social cohesion. In this regard, customs plays three important roles. Firstly, the fiscal role, which this bill deals with, which involves the collection of correct customs duties, which, for example, involves detecting undervaluation and the administration of anti-dumping duties, providing for opportunities to protect our economy and our local industries, and contributes towards the fiscus as well. Of course, honourable members, as you know, 60% of these duties are also shared amongst or with our SACU neighbours. Secondly, customs plays an important trade facilitation role, a subject which is going to be quite central to a meeting of the WTO in December later this year. And this trade facilitation role is in relation to imports and exports to encourage foreign investment and to support our economic competitiveness. And thirdly, customs must apply the necessary controls in order to protect our society from prohibited goods such as drugs from entering the Republic. Also tabled this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, is the Merchant Shipping International Oil Pollution Compensation Fund Contributions Bill of 2013. This Contributions Bill provides for the imposition of the levy on oil importers to contribute to the International Oil Pollution Compensation Fund, the manner in which the levy is determined, and the obligation on the South African government to pay the contributions to the International Oil Pollution Compensation Fund. The Contributions Bill is a money bill as contemplated in Section 77 of the Constitution. It forms part of a package of measures designed to give effect to the Republic of South Africa's obligations under international conventions and protocols pertaining to oil pollution damage. These obligations are the 1969 International Convention on Civil Liability for Oil Pollution Damage, the 1992 International Maritime Organization Protocol to amend the 1969 International Convention on Civil Liability for Oil Pollution, the 1971 International Convention on the Establishment of the International Fund for Oil Pollution Damage, and the 1992 Protocol to amend the 1971 Convention I mentioned earlier on. The three other pieces of legislation which form part of this package of legislative measures are the Merchant Shipping Administration Bill and two bills introduced by the Minister of Transport which have been adopted by the National Assembly, namely the Merchant Shipping Civil Liability Convention Bill and the Merchant Shipping International Oil Pollution Compensation Fund Bill. This package of legislation deals with the issues of liability and compensation for loss or damage caused by contamination resulting from the escape or discharge of oil from oil tankers. The Civil Liability Convention provides that victims are entitled to claim compensation from the registered ship owner or insurers for pollution damage suffered in the territory or exclusive economic zone of a contracting state. Mr. Speaker, I will not bore you with too much more detail. Safe to say that the Contributions Bill proposes to impose a contributions levy to enable the required contributions in terms of the Fund Convention to be paid to the South African Revenue Service by persons liable to pay the contributions, and the Government of South Africa, as I mentioned earlier, will annually pay to the International Oil Pollution Compensation Fund the total amount of contributions invoiced by the Director of that fund. So, in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I hereby table for consideration of this House the Employment Tax Incentive Bill of 2013, the Merchant Shipping International Oil Pollution Compensation Fund Contributions Bill of 2013, the Taxation Laws Amendment Bill of 2013, and the Customs Duty Bill of 2013. I thank you.
I thank the Honourable Minister. Honourable members, the bills as introduced by the Minister will be referred to the Standing Committee on Finance for consideration and report. The Secretary will read the fifth order.
Decision of question on second reading, Lotteries Amendment Bill.
Honourable members, I wish to remind you that after the debate on the second reading of this bill on Tuesday, the 22nd of October 2013, the decision of questions on the second reading was postponed. Are there any objections to the Lotteries Amendment Bill being read a second time? Yes. Order, all members, order. Are there any objections? Okay. Order, all members. I now put the question. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. And those against, no. I think the ayes have it.
Speaker, the DA would like to call for a division on this, please.
Order, all members, order, 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 order. Okay, the division has been called.
Point of order, Speaker, right here.
Yes, sir.
I wish to draw your attention to the fact that quite a number of members of the opposition have just left the chamber.
Now, member, what's out of order there?
It's out of order in the sense that it is a violation of the principles of this House that we work together to pass legislation without deliberate abstentionism and undermining of democracy. I ask you to rule on that question.
I am ruling. A division has been called for, honourable member.
Speaker, there are quite a few committees sitting, and I'd like to advise you that there are several committees that are sitting, and members are leaving to take up their duties there.
So why are you calling for a division in that case? Order, all members. A division has been called for, and the bells will be rung for 5 minutes. Okay, what happens? It's not going to be a. Order. Will members please take their seats?
Honorable Speaker,
I haven't recognized you. I said please take your seats. Will members please take their seats, allocated seats? Will members please take their seats? Thank you. Are members in their allocated seats? Thank you very much. I would like to remind members that they may only vote from their allocated seats. When requested to do so, members must simply indicate their vote by pressing the appropriate button. And if a member inadvertently presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed will be recorded as a member's vote when the voting session is closed by the chair. Order. The question before the House is that the Lotteries Amendment Bill be read a second time. Are all members in their allocated seats? Voting will now commence. Those in favor of the bill being read a second time should press the yes button. And those against should press the no button. And those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have all members voted? Thank you. The voting session is now closed. I am, like yourself, still waiting for the results. But while waiting for the results, let me read you the following rules. A member demanding a division shall not leave the chamber until the results of the division has been declared, and shall vote with those who, in the opinion of the presiding officers, are in the minority. Those are the rules. How many do you need? Okay, thank you very much. Here are the results that we've all been patiently waiting for. A yes vote, 196. The no vote, 18. Abstentions, 13. We will include Honorable Kalyan's vote. That's 14 abstentions in terms of the rules. So the ayes have it. The question is accordingly agreed to, and the Secretary will read the bill a second time. Order, honourable members.
Lotteries Amendment Bill.
Thank you very much.
Speaker.
Honourable Nzimande, you rose on a point of order, yes?
Yes, Honorable Speaker, I wanted to address and request you to please establish whether it is true that there are committees that are sitting at this point in time, or the honorable member is possibly misleading the House. Thank you very much.
The chairperson of the committees.
No, Speaker, no permission was given for committees to be
There are no
sitting.
committees sitting. Honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I will recognize you. Please raise your hand. I'll recognize you. Don't raise a voice, raise a hand, all of you. Take a seat, honourable member. Take your seat. Yes.
Speaker, in light of your reference to the rule that you've just referred to, whereby an honourable member requesting a division may not leave the House,
yes,
can we ask you to give us a ruling as to what happens to the member, Honourable Kalyan, who left the House after requesting a division?
It says, let me read it again. A member demanding a division shall not leave the House until the results of the division has been declared and shall vote with those who, in the opinion of the presiding officer, are in the minority. Her vote has been counted with the minority, those who abstained. That's what the rule
But
says.
Speaker, can I just address you on that? If the rule is that the member may not leave the House,
yes,
and she did leave the House, then there should be action taken against her. And I would want to urge that the Speaker look at the matter, but look at it whether that is a peremptory rule. She may not leave the House, and she did. And there should surely be some kind of sanction for
yes,
breaking
we'll look
the
at
rules.
it, honourable member.
Thank you.
Please take your seat.
Honourable Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Please take your seats. I'll recognize you. Before I recognize you, don't speak. Honourable member, I recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, following on Honorable Kalyan, who had misled the House in light of what the House chairperson has said, I would like to request that she be ordered to withdraw and apologize for her misconduct.
Honourable member, I will come back with the ruling. I said that earlier. Please don't come back to that issue. I'll come back with the ruling. Honourable Fundamental.
Mr. Speaker, if I heard the Honourable House Chair correctly, there are no committees sitting this afternoon.
Yes.
But in my hand, Annexure A, I have a notice that at 1500 today, in E444, I must be present on the Public Protector's report.
Honourable member, the chairperson of committees is here, and there's only one chairperson of committees. Honourable, yes, you had your hand up, Honourable Lekota.
Honourable Speaker, I think that the Honourable Chair of Committees did not answer the question. The question was whether there are committees sitting, not whether there are committees that got permission to meet. And he spoke about whether they have permission or not.
Honourable member, the chairperson of the committee says there are no committees sitting, and you are not the chair. Order, honourable members, order. Is it on this point or at different points?
It's just on the issue of the committees that are sitting. Both police and also finance are sitting, and we have got confirmation of that as well. Thank you very much.
Honourable Speaker, may I address you?
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
On a point of order, I just wanted to ask if the Honourable Kalyan must withdraw because she was misleading the House, then clearly we should ask the Honourable House Chairperson that he should also apologise for misleading the House.
On order, all members, order. Chairperson.
No, thank you, Honourable Speaker. The question was, are there any committee meetings taking place now or sitting? And I said no permission was given for committees to sit when decisions are being taken. The protocol is, Honourable Speaker, that committees may apply, but it's conditional that when the bells ring and a vote is called, they suspend all their proceedings and they proceed to the House. There was thus no committee sitting while the vote was taking place.
Thank you very much. Order, on members. I will come back with the ruling on this issue. And thank you very much. Please take your seat, ma'am.
May I address you, Speaker?
Honourable member, please take your seat. What point are you rising on?
I would like to advise you that I did not mislead the House. The police committee is sitting in G26. I went out to check for myself and I got locked out.
Honourable member, please take your seat. I will come back with the ruling on this issue.
Honorable Speaker,
Yes, sir.
can I just put it on record?
Order, members.
I just want to put it on record that the Committee on Finance is not sitting because there was an assertion that there's a meeting of the Finance Committee in this House.
Yes, and when bells are rung, no committees can sit. It means people are invited to the chamber. Right, we will continue. Order. The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the sixth order.
Second reading debate, Employment Equity Amendment Bill.
The Honourable the Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Deputy President, Honorable Members, colleagues, comrades and friends. I am honored to introduce a number of important amendments.
Will members on my right please take their seats?
To the Employment Equity Act number 55 of 1998. These amendments are contained in the Employment Equity Amendment Bill of August 2013, and let the House note that these are the first amendments to the EEA since it was enacted in 1998. The main purpose of the Employment Equity Act is the elimination of unfair discrimination and implementation of affirmative action measures to bring about equitable workplaces across all occupational levels. This is in line with the work of this government, which has worked tirelessly in changing lives of ordinary South Africans for the better, and for which we can proudly say life is much better than it was before 1994. Unfortunately, employers have refused or are unwilling to make a leap of faith with regards to the transformation. Reports received from the employers over the past 15 years clearly show that not much progress
Will
has
members
been
on
made.
my right please take their seats? I've invited you many times to take your seats. Stop moving up and down.
Whites and males, particularly white males, continue to dominate in the middle top upper echelons of organizations, according to the report by the Commission for Employment Equity for the 2012 reporting period. The Freedom Charter says South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. The main aim of this bill is to give effect to the fundamental constitutional rights, including the right to equality, fair labor practice, and protection against unfair discrimination, to strengthen the implementation and enforcement mechanism of the Act, and to ensure that South Africa complies and meets its obligations in terms of the International Labour Organization standards. The proposed amendments have gone through a rigorous process with the initial advice coming from the EEE Commission, and this process including adopting strategies to engage the public and the stakeholders throughout the public hearings. Amendments of the definition of designated groups, beneficiaries of affirmative action, are now clarified and limited to persons who were citizens of South Africa before the democratic era and their descendants, or those who would have been entitled to citizenships, but due to apartheid policies were not afforded such. Foreign nationals or those that became citizens after 1994 do not assist employers to achieve their AA targets and goals at the expense of designated South Africans. Honorable Chair, the Freedom Charter further says there shall be work and security, and this clause continues to emphasize that men and women of all races shall receive equal pay for equal work. We have inserted a new clause on equal pay for work of equal value. This deals explicitly with unfair discrimination by employers in respect of terms and conditions of employment of employees doing the same work, similar work, or work of equal value. This also includes contract workers vis-à-vis permanent workers, whether employed by the temporal employment agency or directly by the company. In strengthening compliance and enforcement mechanism, securing written undertakings and issuing of compliance orders by labor inspectors were mandatory even if a designated employer did not comply with the law at all. Securing written undertakings and issuing of compliance orders by labor inspectors have been made discretionary in the bill, which may result in non-complying employers being referred directly to the Labour Court for a fine. On arbitration and the CCMA, introduction of arbitration at the CCMA and not just conciliation in terms of current provisions for certain unfair discrimination dispute at the CCMA. This will allow employees an option of referring unfair discrimination cases for arbitration in the CCMA in certain circumstances. And amendments on Schedule 1 of fines penalties. Schedule 1 on fines has not increased since the inception of the Act and now have been increased and linked to the turnover for non-compliance in order to avoid any circumvention of the Act. Honourable Speaker and members, when this bill is enacted, the Department, together with the CEE, will prioritize the finalization of the regulations to bring them in line with the new amendments, and it will ensure necessary systems changes to implement them. Thereafter, the Department will embark on public information sessions for stakeholders on the changes, how they may affect them, and what should be done to implement them properly. I would also like to call on our social partners to put their efforts together to ensure that these amendments are implemented. Let me thank all those who participated and contributed in these amendments, including the CEE Social Partners, NETLEC, Portfolio Committee on Labour for their commitment. Honourable Speaker, let's work together in making sure that the dreams of our forebears are fulfilled. This bill introduces measures that will contribute towards making South Africa a better place for all to live in. With the above in mind, I hereby table and recommend the adoption of the Employment Equity Bill by this House, and I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Chamberlain.
Honourable Speaker, Honourable Deputy President, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honourable Members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, there are not many things in life that are predictable, except that the ANC will win the elections next year. The ANC will win not because of his beautiful colors, but because of his track record of being a champion of progress. The other predictable matter is the poor transformation track record of this country. It is so predictable that you can almost write an accurate introduction of the 2014 Employment Equity Report today. Achieving real transformation of the South African society has proven to be so tough that it seems it will take us 48 years, just like it took the ANC with all its organs to smash apartheid. While the fight for affirmative action makes sense where the minority seeks the leveling of the playing field, it is absurd when it is the majority that is begging for redress. It does sound somewhat preposterous that the majority is struggling to be affirmed in a country where they are in power. How can a fraction of the population continue to hold affirmation of a large majority of the society to ransom, even once when the majority is in power? I've come to accept that the black people are generally very kind, patient, and a forgiving lot. Please do not get me wrong. I'm not for one moment suggesting that this is a bad attribute. That's far from it. But what worries me and many others is the propensity to rubbish the country's transformation efforts and at worst, put political roadblocks on the path to a transformed society. Someone once remarked that one of the reasons why the South African industrial relations environment has become so adversarial is the unacceptable and almost annoying levels of inequality. He pointed out that the levels of inequality in our country remain a recipe for instability. The gap between the rich and the poor is frighteningly so large in this country that it finds expression in many facets of our lives. The trouble with this sorry state of affairs is that one day people are going to run out of patience and demand redress now and not tomorrow. One day it will become so difficult for the ANC to introduce legislation that is enabling and nudging, but it will be forced to start introducing legislative instruments that push a bit harder. If the carrot does not yield the expected results, then you may be left with little choice but to start introducing the stick, and a very big stick for that matter. I don't understand why in general business do not take full advantage of opportunities to self-regulation, but play hide and seek until punitive measures are introduced. The employment equity legislation in the case is the case in point. For many years, the employment equity remains a mere enabling legislation with designated employers enjoying their full latitude to set their own plans with no interference from the government. But what we have gleaned from the reports from the designated employers is that they are not meeting the very target that they have set themselves. This is tantamount to a joke, and a very sick one for that matter. The poor performance of the designated employers to meet their own targets is but an invitation for government to intervene. What has happened to the famous call of the employers for self-regulation? Just by way of illustration, after many years since the advent of Employment Equity Act, Africans still occupied a mere 12.3% of top management positions in 2012. Whites constituted 72.6% of top management. The Coloureds occupied 4.6% and Indians 7.3% of top management positions in 2012. The new and unusual phenomenon is the number of non-South Africans in top management positions in 2012, which stood at 3.1% compared to 0 in 2002. It seems to me that you need to be a non-South African in this country if you want the employment equity to work for you. This picture is a source of sadness, and it should not be, and I repeat it, it is not a true reflection of what many people fought for in this country. Yet there are still those who are calling for a sunset clause on employment equity. On what basis, if I may ask, when the sun has not even arisen? Those who are making this call are mischievous and disingenuous at best, or at worst, contemptuous of our history. This democracy has worked very hard for business, and it continues to do so. The key question, though, is whether or not business has reciprocated by investing in the transformation agenda. The answer, I'm afraid, is a big no, they haven't. Generally, there is sufficient consensus that Employment Equity Amendment Bill tackles the correct issues, and it is spot on what is to be done. What has happened to the progressive business leaders of the past? You will recall that in the mid-80s, Madam Speaker, progressive business formation such as Sakola argued that business in South Africa had to start doing things differently if they have any hope of influencing and shaping the inevitable new order. The top employer, industrialist in this country, also understood the role industrial relations will play as the workplace became the terrain of conflict. To pursue this new thinking, business created a consultative forum as a platform through which to engage the MDM and the ANC in exile. In 1988, the old government proposed new amendments to the Labour Relations Act, which included things that were aimed at reversing gains of workers achieved over many years of struggle. The proposed amendments triggered mass action and strikes of the same, if not greater proportion than those last seen in the 1973 period. This was the first trigger and a real test to test if business under the umbrella of Sakola was genuine about the resolve to find a new way of doing things in South Africa. The bill before us is very mild, and very mild. And those who are complaining is either they have no appreciation of the challenge at hand, or they just don't care. The proposed stick in the bill, proverbially speaking, it's a smack on the palm and nothing to rave about. If we really care about the vulnerable workers and the victims of our ugly past, the bill should go through without too much fuss. If we truly love our country, our constitution, and what it stands for, then this bill should be welcomed with warm hands. The ANC cares, and this is not a slogan. This bill and what it proposes bears true testimony to how much we care. The bill takes into account all the issues raised in the regulatory impact assessment exercise, and we are convinced that the socio-economic benefits far outweighs the negatives. We are also pleased that the bill is by and large the product of robust engagements by the social partners at NETLEC. Which side are you on? The poor or the rich and well-off? The ANC is for the well-being of all with a bias towards the poor. If things continue like this, we may have to consider making compliance with the employment equity as a precondition to do business with the state. I thank you. The ANC support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Van der Westhuizen.
Agbare adjunkspeaker, agbare lede, ek wil graag aan die voorsitter van die komitee sê, ook die Demokratiese Alliansie gee om. Daarom steun ons die wysigings aan die wet op gelyke indiensneming. Hierdie wet het reeds 'n groot invloed op die Suid-Afrikaanse arbeidsmark gehad en is heeltemal te versoen met die DA se beleid van 'n oop geleentheidssamelewing. Suid-Afrikaners se geleenthede in die arbeidsmark is vir te lank ongelukkig beïnvloed deur herkoms en velkleur. Dit het bepaal waar jy woon en werk en watter poste nie vir jou beskore was nie. Ek glo daarom dat almal in hierdie huis aksies steun wat die onregte van die apartheidsverlede probeer regstel. Natuurlik sou ons wou sien dat daar meer gesofistikeerde kriteria as ras moet wees om te bepaal wie hulp benodig om die onregte van die verlede te bowe te kom. Maar vir die huidige blyk ras, hoe kru hierdie klassifikasiemetode ook al is, nog steeds die beste een te wees. Dit is egter ons hoop dat die regering homself in die toekoms toenemend daarvoor sal beywer om 'n beter maatstaf as net ras te vind. Dit is duidelik dat die opstellers van hierdie wetsontwerp oortuig daarvan is dat daar steeds in terme van vergoeding en byvoordele gediskrimineer word tussen mense van verskillende rasse. Hierdie wetsontwerp maak dit dan ook makliker vir mense wat glo dat daar teen hulle gediskrimineer word om hulle regte uit te oefen. Die wet op gelyke indiensneming het die potensiaal om op die langer termyn enorme voordele vir die Suid-Afrikaanse ekonomie te bring. Maar hierdie wet, indien dit nie met die nodige oorleg toegepas word nie, kan ook bydra tot 'n baie groot verlies aan kundige arbeid vir Suid-Afrika. Ek wil dus pleit dat gelyke indiensneming toenemend die onderwerp van formele studies sal wees. Die Demokratiese Alliansie is dankbaar vir elke hofuitspraak wat groter helderheid oor die korrekte toepassing van die wet bring. Enigeen wat op 'n hartelose manier eis dat bruin mense die Wes-Kaap moet verlaat ten einde hulle regmatige plek in die Suid-Afrikaanse ekonomie en staatsdiens op te eis, is in stryd met die gees van gelyke indiensnemingswetgewing. The statistics of the Commission on Employment Equity show that we still have a long way to go in order for all race groups to share in an equitable way in the benefits of this country. The statistics also show that the goal of employment equity is so much easier to reach in times of economic growth and under an effective education system. The NDP summarizes its approach as follows, and I quote, "Career mobility and rising incomes are more likely in an economy that is growing rapidly. Selecting good quality black and female candidates will be easier if the education system is producing ever greater numbers of skilled black and female work entrants. The poor performance of the economy over the last few years have resulted in a weakening of the figures indicating the measure of the employment equity reached in South Africa." Dit kan nie ontken word dat Suid-Afrika 'n groot tekort aan kundige arbeid het nie. Hierdie tekort is oor baie jare aangevul met buitelanders met die nodige kennis en kwalifikasies. Die wetsontwerp vandag voor hierdie huis het onder andere ten doel om buitelanders van die aangewese groepe uit te sluit. Die skerp toename in plaaslike indiensneming van hoogs gekwalifiseerde en professionele persone, veral vanuit Afrika, is 'n duidelike aanduiding dat die grootste faktor wat regstellende aksie strem, die tekort aan Suid-Afrikaners met die nodige kennis en vaardighede is. Die gevaar met die wet op gelyke indiensneming is juis dat dit die probleme aan die insetkant van die arbeidsmark kan verdoesel. In die proses kan dit maklik gebeur dat die regering nie hard genoeg werk om te verseker dat almal wat die skool, college of universiteit verlaat met dieselfde standaard van kennis en vaardighede toegerus is nie. Dit is waarom die Demokratiese Alliansie glo dat die regering 'n oop geleentheidssamelewing moet skep om so die fondamente vir ware regstellende aksie te skep. Ek dank u.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Khanare.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Deputy President, Honourable Ministers who are here, Honourable members. I stand here on behalf of COPE to support the bill. The simple reason for our support is because we believe that normalization of society after several decades of apartheid should be enforced. It is really unfortunate that this bill has to come to our parliament because there are certain employers who believe that white male domination should still reign supreme at the workplace. This bill is necessary because there are employers who decided that the spirit of the Principal Act should be undermined. Instead of embarking on non-racializing the workplace, they resolved that they will give preference to white women only and import blacks to meet the requirement of the Act, which is undermining the objective of the Act. 20 years after democracy, we annually get reports about how bad we are faring in implementing equity in the workplace. The excuse of lack of skilled labor cannot really hold water anymore. With a myriad of legislation to finance skills development, we cannot continue to plead lack of skills because of the reluctance by those involved to utilize funds put aside to develop these skills. Skills development cannot be left to the Department of Education alone. Our tripartite partners at NEDLEC should take skills development seriously and develop a sustainable program of action to develop skills in different areas which will contribute towards economic development. It is important to note that the amendment abolishes the discrimination in the treatment of workers within a particular workplace. It also allows the minister, after consultation with the Commission, to prescribe the criteria and methodology for assessing work of equal value as contemplated in subsection 4 of the Principal Act. The bill, honourable members, allows employees to refer the dispute alleging unfair discrimination on the grounds of sexual harassment to the CCMA. It is consequential, therefore, honourable members, that the volume of work for CCMA might increase, whilst this will make it easier and cheap for workers alleging unfair discrimination on the grounds of sexual harassment to be resolved speedily. The issue of equitable representation at all levels of the employer's workplace categories has been brought to the fore. The intention is to simplify the determination of employment equity at workplace. Our 20 years experience of attempts to address employment equity at different workplaces has been met with resistance from a lot of employers, hence this bill. It is clear that there are employers who are determined to maintain the status quo despite the existence of the Principal Act and its intentions. As a result of this, the Director General is being empowered to apply to the Labour Court to impose a fine against those employers who refuse to abide by the law. The increase in these fines cannot be viewed as unfair because those who will be taken to court will be those who refuse to comply with the Act. This bill also gives teeth to the labour inspectors to enforce the undertaking from a designated employer within a specific period. If an employer refuses to give a written undertaking, the labour inspector is empowered to issue a compliance order. This increase in responsibility of labour inspectors can only be carried out effectively if they are given enough resources and training. Training will create abilities and skills to enforce this bill once it becomes an act. The procedure to enforce this bill should be fair and objective. Honourable Deputy Speaker, COPES believes that the proposed insertion of Section 64A, which empowers the Minister to amend the total annual turnover threshold in order to counter the effect of inflation, is a very progressive move. I personally believe that the earlier we as society deal with the negative effect of apartheid, the better for our future. I hope that this legislation will help our country to move forward in progressively creating a non-racial, non-sexist society. At the workplace, where workers spend majority of their time. The problem we have in this country is that we used to have oppressors and oppressed, and now we only have previously disadvantaged. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Van der Merwe.
Agbare adjunkspreker, die Vryheidsfront Plus verskil met die ANC en die DA oor hierdie wetsontwerp. Hulle ondersteun dit. Die Vryheidsfront Plus verwerp hierdie wetsontwerp en ons is daar teen. I want to say, this bill is bad news for the National Development Plan. And I see the Honourable Minister is sitting here. This bill is bad news for the fiscus because it will not encourage any investor to invest in South Africa. Agbare adjunkspreker, die Vryheidsfront Plus glo, daar moet 'n balans wees tussen die belange van die werkgewer en die werknemer. Maar ek wil vir u sê, hierdie wysigingswetsontwerp hel oor na die belange van die werknemer. Waar kan dit regverdig en billik wees, dat as 'n beskuldiging van diskriminasie teen die werkgewer gemaak word, dat die bewyslas op die werkgewer moet wees om die teendeel te bewys? Dit is totaal onaanvaarbaar. Ek wil vandag vir u sê, dat die vakbondwese in Suid-Afrika se belange word so hoog geag, dat dit die ekonomie van Suid-Afrika geweldig skaad. Dit is nie in belang van Suid-Afrika, dat daar die wanbalans plaasvind nie. Die ANC en die DA, kan jy luister en sien, hulle is besig met verkiesingspraatjies, want hulle wil die massas probeer bereik. I want to say to these honourable members, you can't make the poor rich by making the rich poor. Ons moet die balans kry, want as ons die balans het, dan sal ons die ekonomie in Suid-Afrika kan bou. The honourable member said that some people ask for a sunset clause on affirmative action. The Freedom Front Plus is asking for that sunset clause. Now the honourable member say, but the sun hasn't rise yet. I want to say this, honourable member, it is 2013. It's almost 20 years since 1994. The sun is not only setting on affirmative action, it is setting for the economy of South Africa if we continue with bills like this. And we can never support it. And if you really want to build the economy of South Africa, then you shouldn't even have bills like this. What we need in South Africa is the best people for the best job. Let merit be the criteria, not the color of your skin, or else the sun will set on South Africa.
Thank you, Honorable Groenewald. Honorable Nyakemba.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Deputy President, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members. South Africa is of the 185 member states in the International Labour Organization, and this has been a case for many years. The country proudly carries the flag as one of the few member states where core labor standards are enshrined in the country's constitution and has remained a source of inspiration for many countries, both in the developed and developing economies. Human rights activists continue to hail the South African labor laws as among the best in the world. South Africa, besides being a member in good standing, has been one of the leading countries that has made visible contribution in the shape and content of the international labor agenda, and in some cases, even sponsored texts on some of the ILO's recent conventions and recommendations. International Labour Conference at its 34th session adopted the ILO Convention number 100 on equal remuneration, and in 1958, the ILO Convention 111 on discrimination in employment and occupation. Being two of the 8 fundamental ILO conventions, every ILO member state is obliged to follow the principles expressed in the conventions on equal remuneration and discrimination in employment and occupation. Our country comes from a very much divided and severely unequal past. It cannot be acceptable or be business as usual for the country where inequality is among the worst in the world. It is even more disturbing that the instruments agreed to by all social partners to address this legacy is being treated with contempt by those who are meant to implement it. Wage and income disparities are chronically severe in the South African society. The hard truth is that these things cannot resolve themselves without some interventions. The South African business community is not synonymous with doing things without being pushed. The spectacular failure of a number of enabling pieces of legislation is the case in point, and the employment equity is no exception. The irony is that all social partners agreed that the end game of the employment equity is the right thing to do. If that is the case, then why are not seeing progress on this front? Is overwhelming. The ambitions expressed in the ILO conventions number 100 and number 111 are things that we could have safely relied on our Constitution to address without having to lay down the law. But knowing the attitude of the average employers and some parties like, I don't have to mention the names, in South Africa, we had to go through the pain of drafting legislation to facilitate and regulate this national imperative. The performance of employment equity is not a case for celebration, but that of disappointment and betrayal from some of our social partners. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa provides for the right to fair labor practices in terms of Section 23 of the Constitution, and Section 9 of the same Constitution makes provisions for equality, which an employee may raise in the event of an equal pay dispute. In terms of Section 9, subsection 1 of the Constitution, everyone is equal before the law and has the right to equal protection and benefit of the law. The ANC argued that the principle of equal pay for work of equal value
besides being part of our international obligations, resonates firmly with our constitutional ideals. Therefore, the adoption of this bill is an excellent attempt to promote the Constitution of the Republic. In a country with high levels of unemployment and the unfortunate tendency of behaving in a certain way, the employers to dismiss workers, a comprehensive social security protection net becomes key. The empirical evidence points to the fact that it takes no less than 6 months to secure an employment opportunity in South Africa. For this reason, social protection becomes a matter of must and not an option for South Africa. In addition to many reported complaints of non-compliance, 269 designated employers were placed under the Director General's review process for non-compliance with certain aspects of the Employment Equity Act. They were all issued with recommendations to correct the offending aspects of their equity plans. It is reported that the reasons for such high levels of non-compliance can be placed squarely on the fact that the current law lacks the teeth. Even the fines are set so low that some employers go to an extent of budgeting for them in case they get caught out. Labor brokers flout the employment equity provisions with impunity. The noise against fines for offending designated employers and their friends sends a wrong message that breaking the law should go unpunished. Why is non-compliance with the labor not treated in the same level of importance like those guilty of breaking the competition law and tax law of this country? Does this mean that the labor laws in general and the employment equity in particular are not equal to other laws of the land? It very much sounds like some laws are more equal than others. This is absurd. Passing the Employment Equity Amendment Bill is long overdue, and the time to act is now. The ANC cares, and as such, supports the bill. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Dudley.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ACDP supports the broad intention of employment equity legislation, which is to address the inequalities of the past. But what is particularly problematic with this amendment bill is that the democratic process from Parliament's side has left business stakeholders feeling their views have been totally ignored. Business Unity South Africa's Executive Director Vanessa Parler says the trend of the Labour Committee passing bills without considering the views of business is very, very worrying. And Labour expert Andrew Levy called the processes of consultation a charade. Ms. Parler says the bill's removal of the right of companies to appeal against the compliance orders is a violation of the principle of administrative justice and probably unconstitutional. Busa also argued that the too rapid recourse to the Labour Court to deal with cases of non-compliance would be costly and time-consuming, and that there should be scope for conciliation in line with the Convention of the International Labour Organization. What the poor need most are jobs, and joblessness among black South Africans has almost trebled in 19 years. Presently, only 3% of black South Africans have completed the necessary tertiary studies for management positions, and many of them have only recently qualified and are too young to have gained the experience needed. Now, the South African Institute of Race Relations says it is not a racist refusal on the part of business to employ black people. It is the skills deficit that is the key issue that needs to be addressed. The skills deficit is so acute that many firms are paying premiums of between 10% and 30% for skilled black professionals. Now, instead of recognizing or addressing these problems, important provisions addressing these practical issues have been removed from the current Act. Under this bill, maximum fines will start at 1.5 million rand or 2% of annual turnover, whichever amount is greater, and for a fifth similar offence within 3 years, a maximum fine would be 2.7 million. These proposed fines, coupled with the absorption of skills by a better paying public service, make it virtually impossible for firms to stay in business while working towards increasing black representation at senior levels. The ACDP will, however, be supporting this bill despite our reservations, as we recognise that we are facing significant inequality in South Africa and we must make strides in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Tikobo.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Deputy President, Honourable Members, the Employment Equity Act came into operation in 1998. The purpose of the Act was to address imbalances of the past and to assist people who were put at a disadvantage by laws and past practices, black people and women. Analysts and statisticians tell us that very little has changed in the workplace. The top positions in the corporate world are still dominated by white males, with a few black males being sought by companies in order to reach their equity targets. The main reason for the state of affairs is that the Act is generally difficult to enforce. It is generally vague and lends itself to many possible interpretations. The bill simplifies provisions of the Act by eliminating unnecessary mandatory steps as well as mandatory criteria that must be taken into account in assessing compliance. ASAPO welcomes the revision of the definition of designated groups to ensure that the beneficiaries of affirmative action are limited to persons who are citizens of South Africa before 1994. This will make it impossible for employers to employ foreign nationals who became citizens after 1994 to reach their equity targets. ASAPO also supports the removal of provisions that made it impossible for parties to refer unfair discrimination disputes to the CCMA. It is good that lower paid employees will be entitled to refer any discrimination claim to the CCMA for arbitration. The provision that such disputes could only be referred to the Labour Court was prohibitive in that many workers could not afford fees that were charged by attorneys who represented them. Honourable Deputy Speaker, apartheid in the workplace was based on skin color. People were not oppressed on the basis of religion, level of education, or some sophisticated criterion. They were segregated against because they were black. There is therefore no way of reversing that legacy except by using the so-called race. Or are we expected to use shoe size or some obscure criterion? As we asked before, Minister, we are asking, when is affirmative action going to start? Because it has not started. ASAPO will support the Employment Equity Amendment Bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Motau.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy President. The Democratic Alliance fully supports the constitutional provisions for affirmative action and the objectives of the Employment Equity Act to promote, redress, and diversity in the South African labour market. The DA believes that it is desirable that individuals from diverse backgrounds should lead, participate in, and form part of businesses and other organizations in South Africa, and that corrective action should be taken to achieve such diversity. However, while we support the general thrust of the Employment Equity Amendment Bill before this House today, we remain concerned about some provisions in the bill. We believe some of these amendments could have far-reaching negative impacts on the labour market and consequently the economy of the country because of unintended consequences. We need to remind ourselves always that employment equity and affirmative action have very strong inherent weaknesses, and in that they are concerned only with those people who are in employment. These are people who are already affirmed in that they have a job and they are being developed and assisted to move up the authority and salary ladders in the economy. These necessary interventions say absolutely nothing, and they do absolutely nothing for the more than 7 million South Africans who cannot be affirmed because they are unemployed and remain outside the labor relations framework. Honorable Deputy Speaker, herein lies the country's greatest challenge and potential threat to our economic and political stability. For instance, complaints of unfair discrimination on the basis of equal pay for work of equal value could prove to be quite complex. This could put even greater stress on the already stretched resources of the CCMA. And therefore, regulations in this regard need to be crafted very carefully. We also believe that linking some penalties for non-compliance to a company's annual turnover could be very risky, as some vulnerable designated employers, particularly small and medium enterprises, may not be able to survive such fines and could be forced to shut down at the cost of much-needed jobs. In a perfect world, all designated employers would comply with the law, but we are not there yet. Therefore, laws such as the Employment Equity Amendment Bill should not be made for punitive reasons driven by frustration and impatience. Such an approach merely increases the degree of inflexibility in our labor legislation regime. This raises the barriers to job creation, and that cannot be good for employment and economic growth. The Commission on Employment Equity was scathing in its latest report about the lack of progress in this area. Therefore, government, business, and labor need to engender a sense of common purpose and mutual trust with regard to employment equity if this country is to show significant improvement in the next EE report. Employers should be encouraged to understand that employment equity and affirmative action are business and economic imperatives necessary for effective nation building and to grow the country's tax base. This is necessary to provide the funds needed to service the ever-growing number of newly unemployed workers who survive on finite unemployment insurance benefits and the millions of South Africans who depend on social grants. And here I need to remind ourselves, the fact that millions of South Africans are on social grants is not to be celebrated. It simply means that millions of our people are poverty-stricken. Heavy penalties for those who provide employment and contribute to the growth of the economy for errant behavior could be counterproductive and should be resisted. Sometimes incentives can have a more positive effect than punishment. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Manamela.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members, honorable ministers. We have gone through an arduous process of clarifying why we need this bill. And we think that what is more important is the fact that year after year, we have been told by the Commission on Employment Equity that instead of reversing the inequalities of the past, we are actually deepening those inequalities of the past. That part of the major problem that our country and our economy is facing is the deepening inequalities, deepening poverty, and deepening unemployment, which significantly affects, in particular, black people. And that the provisions as made by the current Employment Equity Act are not sufficient to reverse and to address the economic imbalances of the past. One of the most significant policy decision and political decision that the ANC made in the build-up to the 1994 general elections was not to be involved into reverse racism, was not to turn apartheid upside down and have a government led by Nelson Mandela that would avenge on those who were at the helm of the apartheid system. That one of the critical decisions that the ANC made in 1994 was to ensure that the transition becomes smoother, that everyone, black, Indian, colored, and white, feels that they are part of this particular country, and that they all contribute into the building of this country. That the stability that we today are enjoying has been as a result of the compromises which have been made at that particular time. But to suggest that we today, 20 years after the democratic dispensation, need to be talking about the sunset clauses is basically to suggest that 20 years later, we can and should be able to reverse the atrocities which were committed for 350 years. Is to suggest that racialism, colonialism, which were imposed for more than 350 years to our own people, can easily be reversed in a period of 20 years. And that to basically suggest that in 20 years' time, we can speak of an equal society, we can speak of a situation where race is not considered and empowered. To begin to question why certain people, because of their race, are paid more than certain people in a workplace. Today, because of this bill, trade unions and civil society will begin to ask the question why certain people, because of their race, will be promoted faster than certain people on the basis of their race. Today, because of this bill, we will realize the transformation of the workplace. History will be a situation wherein more than 70% of the management in the workplaces are predominantly white, and that the majority of the population remain on the sidelines of transformation. The majority of the population remains on the sidelines of what this democratic dispensation is actually supposed to be offering. Today, because of this bill, women, in particular black women, will realize the value of our democracy. Today, as a result of this employment equity bill, farm workers, wherever they are, will realize why it was important that in 1994 they went out, and even subsequently, to go and vote for an ANC government. It is only because of this bill that we realize the transformation of our society and changes directly in the lives of our own people. Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Manamela. Honorable Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I just want to say to Honorable Groenewald that, it's very surprising when you come here and say what you have said, and I don't think that your member, who is a member of the Portfolio Committee, can say, because this bill emanates from the ILO convention, and your member participated in the standard commissions during the ILO conference. And now you come here and you say you don't support this, while your member supported what was said in the ILO. And Honorable Dudley, I think the issue that was raised by Ms. Vanessa Pala, I think it's wrong to come and say here, based on the comments by BUSA, therefore you have concerns, because BUSA participate in all the structures at NETLEC, in the ILO, and the very same Vanessa is a member of the organized business who always participate in the ILO conference, in ARLAC, and even at SADC level. And she agrees with everything that we discussed before we go to those conferences, even after we have come back home. And therefore, I think you must just sit down with her and say she must not play the double agenda. And secondly, I just want to highlight to the honorable members that when you talk about a business vis-a-vis organized labor, I'm not sure which business you are representing, because the organized business and organized labor serves also in the Human Resource Development Council that deals with the skills development issues, that is led by the President, where they say This is where there is a lack of skills, and therefore, this is how we have to work together with the government, including the issues, by the way, of the farmers. The farmers has asked us as the Department of Labor to say, can you take us through on the labor law so that we can be able to comply with this legislation? Now, I'm not sure whom are you representing, because organized business, and including in particular the farmers on these particular matters, we have agreed. And I want to thank all the political parties who have supported this bill. And that is the confirmation that says ANC leads and ANC lives. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time?
Yes, Honourable Deputy
No
Speaker.
object.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, yes. The ANC may lead the DA, but they are not leading us. I ask that our objection be noted. Thank you.
Objection noted. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Employment Equity Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the 7th order.
Second reading debate, South African Language Practitioners Council Bill.
Honorable Minister of Arts and Culture.
Ohloniphekile Sekela Somlomo, Honorable Deputy President, Honorable Ministers here present, Nani Manenekazi. On the 7th of August last year, I stood before this House to table for consideration the use of official languages bill. On that day, we said we were taking a major step in promoting multilingualism in our country. We also said we were strengthening our efforts to build South Africa that truly belongs to all who live in it, black and white, united in their diversity. Today, honorable members, as I table the Language Practitioners Council Bill, I do so in order to take forward the work we are doing to promote the widespread use of all official languages. Once again, we are delighted that the bill we are tabling is a product of popular participation and broad consensus among various stakeholders. By tabling this bill, we are, as directed by the Constitution of our country, taking another step forward in ensuring that all languages enjoy parity of esteem. Itlela ishishima no sirelela timfanelo ta maAfrika-Dzonga hi ririmi. In particular, through the bill, we are ensuring that there is proper regulation of the language profession and thus addressing some of the challenges it faces. The challenges include the vulnerability of exploitation of many language practitioners, the lack of clear and practicable standards for the language profession, and lack of protection for members of the public who may be prejudiced by the services rendered by language practitioners. In addressing these challenges, the bill provides for the establishment of the South African Language Practitioners Council. It sets out the objective, the powers, duties, and functions of that council. Critically, the bill seeks to regulate the training of language practitioners and provide for the control of their accreditation and registration. The bill also proposes that the South African Language Practitioners Council acts as an advisory body to the minister responsible for language matters. The Council is also expected to prescribe the rules governing the conduct of language practitioners, language professionals, and the procedures for compliance, monitoring, and enforcement. We are also proposing that the Council provides and encourages the provision of opportunities for South Africans, especially from disadvantaged communities, to enter the language profession. The status of the language profession, we are likely to see more South Africans pursuing careers in the language profession. Vunzuku Vyatinzimi, Tata Nelson Mandela, who wrote the following, their poetry, because it is only through language that we can reach out to one another and embrace each other's diversity. Mohlompehi speakera, ke motlotlo go o tekala bili ya lekgotla la basebeletsi ba puo.
I just want to start by saying that in the committee, we agreed on the bill, so I'm not expecting any surprise.
It's bad. Continue, Honorable Member.
Speaker, the ANC, some people, especially the first people, the Khoi and the San who fought, during that process, the illegitimate state used African taxes to marginalize their own languages, while the languages of the oppressors were prominent to English. We want to assure South Africans, abantu bethu, that bills the same both in government and in commerce. This bill will ensure that equal status is given to practitioners from all official languages in South Africa. Right now, only English and Afrikaans have some resemblance to a professional sector, but this is unregulated and cannot cater for minority. There is no evidence that suggests that language practitioners are accountable and that they are obliged. The establishment of the council and turn them into a service and get away with it. When it comes to Africa ongumlungu, kodwa lamntu angabhatalwa okanye kuthiwa akayo professional, kodwa le language ayithetha uyamnceda ugqirha amxelele uba umuntu uyagula uphethwe intloko uphethwe zinyawo. Hence, the proposed council will promote indigenous languages by ensuring that people working in the language sector are not exploited and are paid what they are to access the language sector as a trade. We stand proudly to say that those who are educated, the researchers, bayahamba pha bayifumana ilanguage ngabatholi isiphe chelete yile limakhuwa. So these people from our community, editors and so forth, once they realize that they bayaqhathwa, South Africa has moved away from promoting. And when you go to a hospital, sometimes you'll find that when an interpreter is not doing well at the job of translating information, to ensure that they meet certain standards in the school for prescribing how to regulate the sector that should be governed indigenous languages as a way to undo the damage that was done by the apartheid minority government. It's so unfortunate that Honorable Stianis, my friend, is not here today because he says it, but you'll pass that message. Exactly. No, they say that this language was recognized. And further to say that as we speak about practicing these languages, we encourage also the work of the practitioners who are teachers who would say the children must speak English even at home, and they think those languages are superior than them just because they are those professional Honorable Mayor Sogolisa namhlanje and just agree with.
Thank you, Deputy in ons land. Bygesien natuurlik as die taalblakke van tersiêre studie. Ek was 'n BA student op die graad, daarin afgekyk het op ons mense wat asme en ywer. Ek wil die tale in ons land opnoem. Tale wat leef op die tonge van taal in taal dalk gaan sluk. En ek is so bly oor hierdie wysigingswetsontwerp, want dit ontsluit die moontlikhede. Daar gaan baie geleenthede wees om jou taal te timmer, om soos NP van Wyk Lou die buitel in te span om die aarde oop te kloof. Dit is wat taal met nie verwag, wat glad nie studeer het in sê nou maar 'n graad behaal het, help om vir iemand wat na die dokter toe kom om vir die dokter te verduidelik. Hulde bring, ek weet nie waar sit die vertalers hier in die parlement nie. Baie dankie wat julle doen. Nou kan julle ook aansoek doen oor die radio of 'n storie wat vertaal word, dat jou taal nooit are relatively new. We have emerged from our political transition in 1994 as groups divided by history, but united by the vision that we have human rights. A vision of a people. Mag dit goed gaan met al die tale in ons land en wees lief vir jou taal asseblief.
Van der Berg, Honorable Chikela.
Molweni apha ekhaya. Injani ivuko? Udla ngamandla lo. Funa ndifake iglasi ndibone yonke le nto iqhela uyibona. For the first time in life and in South Africa, the issue of languages and language practitioners is now placed as one of the top priority in the country development agenda. Andingixelela ndizibasa phinda ndingathethi isilungu ngoku. Re-environment, they have been deprived their right to freedom of expression in this country. Apha kule ndlu yowiso-mthetho, definitability, registrable LPs, and include Pansal in the countries, who may not pose This bill will give language practitioners dignity they deserve. The bill also seeks to provide for the public who make use of services provided by language practitioners. The time has arrived where there is nobody to be held accountable, because that would open calls for implementation.
Madam Deputy Speaker, not that I had been undermining the language profession, but I realized when we made massive contributions to arts and culture in this bill, complied fully with provision. I can confirm that it was not a mere question of compliance. Yes. Those inputs are included in this bill. Because of the importance of this, we therefore verily believe and trust that this juristic person. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Mulder.
It seems that this is quite an ordinary bill, that I should relax and do not worry about Afrikaans being threatened in any way. You can relax. If for some reason, at some stage, this country are not white, many millions of people out there speak Afrikaans. So language can be and should be a very strong point in terms of social cohesion and true nation building. Once we start going down this road where we are now, in terms of the Constitution says in Section 6, 11 official languages. The day what we should strive, practitioners, official practitioners council there to make these things official and to assist when we go down the route of multilingualism, which South Africa cannot do without. So, of course, the Freedom Front Plus will support this bill. We will support every measure in terms of which takes our multilingualism further, in terms of which we respect our different languages, and of course our children should be able to speak the different languages. Then we can understand one another. Then we can take our country further. I want to ask you, for once, let's look forward, not backwards. Let's look forward in terms of positive thinking of what this may bring to South Africa. Then we can take it further. We will support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Mafunda.
Mr. Secretary, Mr. Secretary, President Watiko, all of the Wandrauli Abutsila and Dabuko, Nam Secretary Wangwina, Naba Holobze Kwabo, Naba Secretary Babona, Nisi Rosa Indulio Saseka Songasi. In Carlo Nenesis, Kubulabla now BC low, what Magadatin Zimtati Korahina. Na ila ikutaza kuba akatiku nkwabo kutinyungubzisa na kuhlayisa ndhavuko na ndzhaka leyi ya tindzimi ta hina. Nawumbisi lowu wu khutaza vanhu hinkwavo ku tokota swinene hi ku vulavula tindzimi ta hina hi rixaladze vutshila na mfuwo wa ririmi hi ku hetiseka ka rona. A hi tinyungubyiseni swin'we hi tindzimi leti ta hina ta xintima leti a ti ri hansi ka ntshikelelo hi mfumo lowu nga hundza wa xihlawuhlawu. Honorable Deputy Speaker, this democratic and caring government, of course under the leadership of the African National Congress, find it necessary to establish a juristic person for the protection and promotion of language practices in the Republic. The South African Language Practitioners Council Bill is established in order to facilitate an effective implementation of the constitutional obligation concerning multilingualism as contemplated by Section 6 of our Constitution, meaning that all South Africans will be able to use the official languages of their choice as a matter of right within the range of context, as also contemplated in the already promulgated Use of Official Languages Act of 1912 that has just been signed by the Honorable the President of the Republic. These bills, as Honorable Chairperson has already indicated, seeks to regulate the language practitioners and ensure that they are accredited, registered, and offer their services in a professional manner. Moreover, this bill will also seek to formalize the existence of language practitioners as accredited experts governed by the set standard and norms. State language practitioners through language policies and legislations. The Language Practitioners Council also will change the perception that the indigenous languages are in fact own people under the apartheid regime. As a token of appreciation, high standard of language use by our practitioners. So vulnerable language practice sector, and this will link up with the opportunities either all national departments under the Use of Official Languages Act of 1912. Own home languages. Moreover, organic language people se atirikari tirikusuyi na kurivariwa tirikari tiya ekufeni tita pushetiwa tithlela titirisiwa our country. Therefore, the ANC supports the bill. Kujangovu awi kuhlula ndlala mtshamo wa xitulu digimeta mbulavulo wa mina.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy. This right applies only to those who use a language of one's choice. It's not being enjoyed by people. The people who stay in the areas of Majaneng, that's me, more than knowing that I cannot address this house in my own language, simply because it is not one of the official languages. But what you have said applies, supported by science and research. Linguists have confirmed that. That is a full support, the Language Practitioners Council Bill. I thank you.
Agbare adjunct speaker, veel in hierdie grondwet en die gebruik van amptelike tale wet van 2012. Dit vereis, hierdie wette vereis dat inheemse tale waarvan Afrikaans ook deel vorm. In staatsbespreking is hier, gaan 'n deurslaggewende rol speel by die implementering. Professionalisering, PC be established as a juristic person to provide for control of the minister on matters affecting the language profession. Registreer en ook om geskikte mense te akkrediteer, om besonderhede van voornemende taalpraktisyns na te gaan, belange te beskerm, die taalpraktisyns, maar ook die kliënte, die publiek. Laastens om die industrie in ons land. Die implementering van hierdie wet te bestaan of ontstaan aan genoeg leksikograwe, vertalers, interpreteerders ensovoorts ensovoorts. Die wet kan lei tot 'n wen-wen situasie. Die grondwetlike vereiste van veeltaligheid word aangespreek en werkskepping in 'n voorheen verwaarloosde industrie kan nou uiteindelik tot sy reg kom. Die groot voorwaarde, en ek sluit daarmee af, die groot voorwaarde bly egter die politieke wil van die regering om die gebruik van amptelike tale wet en die wet van vandag, die SALPC, op grondvlak te implementeer. En ongelukkig, agbare adjunkspeaker, is dit nie iets waarin die huidige regering hom elke dag onderskei nie.
And thank you, Honorable Member. Your time is up.
Ja, the DA will support this bill.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Moss.
Baie dankie, adjunct speaker. Achtbare adjunct speaker, achtbare leden van het parlement, achtbare deputy president, en ook die gasten in die galerij. Een nama en een kooi groet gay mire. Dat sê ek groet nou allemaal hier in die parlement mire. Adjunct speaker, soos u gehoor het en soos die minister en ander aangevoer het, is die erkenning van tale in Suid-Afrika nie 'n maklike taak nie, omdat het so 'n sensitieve kwessie is. Dat is nie net 'n kwessie vir mense of vir lede wat daar sit in die kabinet en dan kom hulle hier praat, dan woon hulle nie eens die vergaderings by nie. En daar die lede weet wie hulle is. Ek gaan nie die naam noem nie. Die Afrika-tale is histories nie eens goed genoeg geag vir onderrig of leer nie. Studente is nie net gedwing om subklasopvoeding te verdien nie, maar ook om in tale te leer wat nie hulle eie was nie. Ek praat van die verlede. Gevolglik is daar afbreek gedoen aan die Afrika-tale as deel van 'n agenda om swart mense te onderdruk. Die ANC-beleid het die onderwikkeling van tale, kultuur en erfenis op die sakelys geplaas, omdat taal dienslewering vergemaklik. Wanneer mense inligting in hulle taal ontvang op plekke soos die howe, banke, hospitale en skole, bou ons ook 'n maatskaplike samehorigheid. So ek wil vir die achtbare lid van die Vryheidsfront Plus sê dat die ANC gee om vir sy mense van hierdie land. So die ANC adresseer die ongelykigheid van die tale. Uiteindelik moet die Vryheidsmanifest en Grondwet C4 van hierdie twee dokumente beskerm die universele regte van mense ongeag hul ras, kleur, geslag en klas. So dit is deel van nasiebou. Soos u gehoor het, wil die wetsontwerp op die Suid-Afrikaanse Raad vir Taalpraktisyne verseker dat ons 'n pool beroepsaam mense het wat die inheemse tale vir amptelike beleidseindes vlot praat. Mire. Soos achtbare Mavunda gesê het, as 'n mens vandag na die samelewing kyk, is die neiging dat mense wat as vertalers en tolk geld maak, diegene is wat die Engels en Afrikaans doen. 'n verandering is nou nodig. Tale wat onder apartheid verswak het, word elke dag deur ons mense gebruik. Byvoorbeeld soos die Nama, die Tswana,
en Sivenda en ander tale wat nie neergeskryf en nie vir amptelike doeleindes in ons regering gebruik nie. Dit verseker omdat opgeleide beroepsmense wat in hierdie tale 'n goeie diens kan lewer, nie in die land as beroepstaalpraksyne erken word nie. 'n Liggaam soos die raad is nodig om die taalsektor te reguleer, om te verseker dat mense wat tolke, taalversorgers en vertalers wil wees, behoorlik opgelei word en dat die publiek beskerm word teen kansvatters wat omgee dat hulle 'n taal praat, maar dit in ander waarheid nie praat nie. Reeds by die opstel van die grondwet is gesê dat die regering die status van die amptelike tale in Suid-Afrika moet verhoog en die gebruik daarvan moet bevorder. 19 jaar later is dit die ANC-regering wat daarvoor geveg het dat ons tale gelyk behandel en teen diskriminasie beskerm word. Ons moet dus daardie staatsdepartemente, entiteite en besigheidshede prys wat materiaal in 2 van meer amptelike tale aanbied. Dit is egter nie genoeg nie. Meer moet gedoen word om te verseker dat ons die Vryheidsmanifest en die grondwet uitvoer. Die ANC sê, as ons saamwerk kan ons meer doen. Die hele wetsontwerp op die Suid-Afrikaanse Raad vir Tale Praktisyne is in lyn met die grondwet. Toe die openbare verhoor geplaasgevind het, is die spertyd verleng om te verseker dat die belanghebbendes en mense wat geraak word insette oor die wetsontwerp kon lewer. Die grootste gedeelte van die kommentaar en verleggings wat ons van die publiek ontvang het hoofsaaklik bestaan uit minder belangrike besonderhede oor die samenstelling van die raad en die regulering van 'n grootliks ongereguleerde sektor. Regulering is 'n goeie ding vir daardie kulture en tale wat histories benadeel is. Sonder die ANC-regering sou die tale van die nageslag van eerste mense, die Khoi en die San, byvoorbeeld verdwyn het. U sal daarop let dat daar nou meer as ooit tevore ook publikasies in ander inheemse tale gedruk word en dat die land se mense aangemoedig om ander mense te tale te leer. Dit is president Jacob Zuma se missie om te verseker dat die bydrae van die Khoi en San gemeenskappe tot die stryd teen kolonialisme in Suid-Afrika erken word. Die ANC steun die wetsontwerp en versoek die burgers om trots te wees op hulle erfenis en ook die wetsontwerp te steun. Ek wil sê, soos ek gesê het alreeds, dit sal baie goed wees as lede van die parlement kan kyk wanneer 'n item op die agenda is van die parlement om miskien hom of haar belangstelling te kom toon as jy omgee vir jou constituency. Maar nie kom om hierdie platform te gebruik, dan wil jy kom praat oor anderlike goed, maar ek het nog nooit die komitee bygewoon nie. Tweedens, dieselfde lede het laaste jaar July in Soweto die Nasiebou en Cohesies Summit bygewoon. En daardie summit kon elke inwoner of burger van Suid-Afrika sy misnoë uitspreek, ewen op die punt van die tale. Nou kom gebruik ons hierdie platform om jou misnoë te kom. Ek dink dit is opportunistiek. Baie dankie, adjunct speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Moss. Honorable Minister of Arts and Culture.
Adjunct Speaker, baie dankie. Ek wil al die lede van die kommitee bedank vir die werk wat julle gedoen het. Let me take this opportunity to thank Honorable Sunduza and all the members of the committee, all the parties for supporting the bill. I think our message is loud and clear this afternoon that let us take pride in our languages. Let us develop them, let us promote them, and make sure that we teach the younger generations as well. And I want to say to Honorable Dikobo that the Constitution does provide for the development of other languages other than the official ones. So it's important that those who feel that there are languages that we should be looking at developing, we are more than prepared to look into that. But the important thing is that languages that are not spoken and written will disappear. So a language must be spoken. So it's important that if we have to develop these other languages, we should speak them, we should write those languages and make sure that they can also be preserved and developed. I want to, therefore, Honorable Deputy Speaker, conclude once more by thanking all honorable members and assure you that we will work with everybody and all South Africans to ensure that we develop all our languages. Baie dankie. Ek is baie bly vandag. Akensa. Inkom.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? No objection. Agreed to the bill. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
South African Language Practitioners Council Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the last order of the day.
Second reading debate, South African Postbank Limited Amendment Bill.
Honorable Kolwane, Chairperson of the committee, will introduce the bill.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honorable members, ministers, Deputy President. Indeed, on the 1st of December 2010, the South African Postbank Act came to being, which provides or provided for the incorporation of the Postbank division of the South African Post Office as a wholly owned subsidiary of the Post Office. In terms of that act, the corporatization of Postbank will trade as a South African Postbank Limited. The act came into operation on the 22nd of July 2011, and implementation started around August 2011, with a number of activities being performed by different key players, amongst others the Department of Communications, National Treasury, South African Postbank and Post Office, and also the South African Reserve Bank, under the committee which was established for that particular work. Indeed, considerable progress has been made in terms of implementation of that act. As we can count, the transactional advisor was appointed and the launching of the license has already been started. The process to separate the asset and liabilities between Postbank company and the Post Office has already been concluded. A cooperation agreement between the two companies in terms of how to use the infrastructure, it has already been done. And indeed, we must thank Treasury that an amount, of course, minimum amount, has been put aside to ensure that indeed this process become a success. However, I must indicate that during this process, the South African Reserve Bank raised some concern about some of the provisions of the bill. Hence, we are here today talking to the amendment of that particular act. Among other sections which need to be amended is Section 3, the section which was exempting the Postbank to the provision of the Banks Act. Another section which need to be repeated was Section 4 of that act, which talked to the requirement of compliance by the Postbank, which original that act put squarely to the minister. And also this bill seeks to amend Section 25, which ensure that the powers of the minister to intervene in the Postbank company is limited, or it complies with the Banks Act in terms of Section 60, subsection 6, Section 69, and Section 69A of the Banks Act. And indeed, for us as the African National Congress, we see the Postbank as an important postal infrastructure aimed at achieving socio-economic developmental goals in line with the developmental state agenda. Postbank must become the preferred bank of choice for the poor, and for this reason must become sustainable. Hence the amendment. In order to guarantee a sustainable model that upholds the values of the ruling party or government. Postbanks comes at the critical time of the post office and in the advent of technology, which impacts negatively on the traditional delivery model of postal services. However, we should commend post office to view influence of technology within the context of revitalization of its services and provide innovative and affordable bank solutions to the poor communities who cannot afford to open a bank account, and in that fact, they cannot put aside some saving for their families in the future. In conclusion, corporatization of Postbank will offer real long-term financial benefits and solutions. I must also thank the Portfolio Committee, the Department of Communications, the legal services, the state law advisors, and everyone who has been involved in these amendments, in particular the South African Reserve Bank, who ensure that indeed we do comply with the Banks Act. Deputy Speaker, I commend this bill to the House. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kolwane. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? No objection, agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
South African Postbank Limited Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to National Council of Provinces for concurrence. That concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned. Thank you very much.